Hi, everyone. My name is Sean Heidi. I'm a research analyst here at CSA, and today I'm going to be going over cybersecurity research that builds partnerships and best practices. I am taking over for John Yo, our global VP of research. He lost his voice recently, so I'm going to be doing his presentation. So why don't we go ahead and just switch in a photo of me as a replacement? And we'll get started. So I wanted to begin this by really saying the title and going more in depth on what that really means for us. So, building partnerships. What does that mean for CSA? A big part of this is not only the members, but the volunteers coming together to really start building a bigger picture in security. So, when we bring all different views and perspectives into play, we can really start getting more in depth and granular for our research. And this also helps our ability to learn as well as other individuals' abilities to learn. So, no matter what level of knowledge you're at, it's the ability to come in, be a fly on the wall, be an expert, and really start helping drive conversations. And that's been our goal for research over the last few years, and trying to bring in a lot of new ideas and moving into new technologies and really focusing on what the industry is seeing and what is impacting them. And so, once a lot of companies were seen as competitors, coming into CSA as members and volunteers, it's bringing everyone together aside from any of that and really focusing on bettering the foundation for security as a whole and the enterprise space. And so it's really key for us to build that partnership and those best practices, but doing it together. So our next slide here is what research is focused on and what it means for CSA research to focus on. So we have four of our categories: technology, data, processes, and organizational change. So what's technology? Well, technology are our three cloud environments, or the three types of cloud environments. You have your infrastructure, your platform, and your software as a service. But what we do and focus on for research are the other new domains. So things like AI, machine learning abilities, blockchain, and things like next gen. So we have our quantum, IoT, 5G networks, and we really start focusing on what each of these means for security and what has a call. What is calling to us to have a focus on security in this day and age? And next is the data. So, what does data mean for any of this? So, people care about cloud because of the protection and privacy of the data that's going into those services. And so, you need to focus on things like classification schemes, digital asset management, privacy, big data, data lakes, Amazon buckets. All of this matters when we talk about data. The apps and the services are great on one end of things, but it's the users and the people using them where that confidential information will be stored for your business. And so it's critical that we understand how to protect that over time. Next, we have the process. And so this is going to be the business side of the house. This will be things like your migration work, your compliance, your strategy, your methods and techniques. And the process section is where you need that executive buy-in, and you need business leadership to really understand why the focus on cloud security is so important. And for research, it's us gathering that, building step by step on how to approach that and taking that to the next level. And a lot of that recently, from my own research perspectives and from other working groups, has been being able to adapt to compliance and the methods in which you can formulate and create a step by step strategy moving forward. The last item that we focus on for research is our organizational change. So what does this mean when we're moving into the cloud? We were originally on-prem, we're focusing on the cloud. How does our organization focus moving into the future? This is things like disruption internally. How will this impact projects? How will this impact day-to-day operations? Speed and agility. It's going to make us faster. We're going to be able to respond things, deploy things faster. How do we do that though? And what does that look like? And also within internal research, what does that look like for other companies? So you have the ability with other companies to see how they're handling these things. Things might be faster, but what were roadblocks that really impacted that along the way? And we really like to focus on evolving and adapting, being able to go with the strides, being able to see what the next new product is that you need for a business use case, but also how your business needs to adapt to that and how to really start learning and understanding how these things are deployed. Lastly is culture. I know it's talked about a lot in this day and age in the industry, but culture is a big part of moving forward in not only cloud, but security as a whole. Things are changing every day. It's very important that your business and the individuals within your company, your team, your sector are really understanding why this is important and being able to bring everyone together. Not a lot of people are going to move at the same speed of others. It's important that we really start to adapt to that culture shift and that culture change and make sure everyone is keeping at the same pace along the way. Our next research, we really focused on pandemic impacts on the IT departments and spending costs and things like that. Over the last 2 years, we've been in a pandemic. It's been rough on a lot of businesses trying to stay afloat. Technology teams trying to focus on what key areas they need to look at. It was probably, you would think, less security and more focus on just getting things set up remotely for people. I think we hit a point where we all were like, oh, we don't have a remote environment set up. We need to do this within the next couple weeks. And so we met that force. But what we found was on the IT spends on the left-hand side, we actually saw 2020 growth went up for public cloud usage. So things like SaaS applications, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service. It actually did not go down. It went up compared to things like your IT services, devices, and enterprise software, which is interesting because if we take a look on the right-hand side, what we found was security things like data security, IAM, network security, had generally a lower decrease, but cloud security went up. And so when we start putting these two things together, the why came into play. So why was cloud security but not other security focused on? Well, when we moved to remote, a lot of these companies and a few of them underwent a few breaches. And so things like cloud security in the middle of a pandemic came into play. And so the 33% for cloud security, that was to us somewhat of a low estimate. We predict that this number could have been significantly higher when looking at the bigger picture. But it just goes to show that trending forward, even during a pandemic, cloud security is a key component of the total enterprise space. Okay, let's discuss security strategy in cloud. So 76% of large enterprises are currently using a multi-cloud environment. And of those 76% environments, we're seeing 275 SaaS applications per enterprise. And this was one of CSA's recent statistics. And then we're seeing also from a Netscope average that they had done 1,200 applications per enterprise. And these include things like scanning for shadow IT, finding applications that other enterprise users have purchased and that the company was not aware of. Now, McAfee, this number goes as high as 1,900 applications per enterprise. And so what this is really saying for research is that there is a lack of governance models because those numbers jump pretty sporadically from 275 to 1,200 to 1,900. There's something going on there that we need to look at. And that's the ability to track and audit what applications are being used in your environment. And this speaks to cloud governance and the ability to find and consolidate for a business what you should be focusing on. And that's your ability to log and have an inventory of applications. And shadow IT has been talked about for a long time, but it's also our ability to track what we're using, building those processes for cloud. So from RFPs to finding which vendor you want to use to moving forward. That's really what a focal point for research has been, and being able to help enterprises really adapt to that. The fact that we have these spanning numbers and how vast they are when it comes to cloud really kind of focuses on the main point. We can't do security if we don't know what to secure. And that's what we're trying to evolve into and build foundational things for, is really identifying those key areas there, because those are big numbers. And I bet if anyone takes those to your enterprise, you yourself may have applications that you knew nothing about that are cloud-based. And the zones for entry from an attacker are just going to increase the more and more that people leverage these cloud applications. And so it's very critical that we build security and guidance around those. So next we'll talk about foundational guidance at CSA currently, what research has developed and deployed over time with the help of members and volunteers. And that starts at our highest level guidance, which would be our guidance V4. This is your things with intro to the cloud, governing in the cloud, and operating in the cloud. And this gives you the day one base. This is what cloud is. This is what, things are being looked at. This is what's being focused on. And then when you have that high level overview is when you get a little bit more granular as we go through the right hand side. And that's when we get into things like reference architectures. So I lead the enterprise architecture working group, and our enterprise architecture to CCM mapping has been an incredible documentation for enterprises to see the steps to take and the departments within an enterprise to look at in order to be like, all right, what does cloud mean for this? What does cloud mean for my business? And what controls do I even need to focus on? And why does it matter for me? Things like the enterprise architecture focus on business aspects as well as security. It focuses on HR, change management, enterprise risk management, and it brings that all into play on a foundational level for what that means moving into the cloud for your business. And so it's really contextualizing cloud solutions, identifying your security gaps, and even helping in your policy creation. More recently, we've had a lot of discussions on the lack of cloud policy and development. And what we have found is the EA to CCM guidance is the perfect template almost for being able to adapt to, okay, this is what my business is missing. How do I implement that into a policy? And it's, if you take a look at it, it does get very granular to the point that it's almost a plug and play for things like policy creation. That takes us next to our security controls. So things like the cloud controls matrix and the CAKE, the consensus questionnaire. So this is going to look at things like your security controls, mitigations, assessment questions that are all mapping to industry specified controls and frameworks. This also is allowing you to mature your auditing program moving into the cloud. A lot of traditional on-prem audits are not going to act in the same way that a cloud audit is. They're going to start focusing on things like service level agreements, disaster recovery, business continuity, bringing those all together and what that means for cloud. Because what it once meant for on-prem will not be the same for cloud solutions, because now you have a shared responsibility model that you are essentially sharing with another company. Lastly, we have our cloud and data governance. So this is your hybrid and multi-cloud environments. These are the challenges and best practices when it comes to data governance, because that's always going to foundationally be one of the biggest problems, is the ability for the business to understand their data. And this is going to also include lift and shift. What does lift and shift mean? How do you move forward with that? How do we piece this out? Are we jumping straight into Azure or AWS? I mean, what do we move first? So it's really addressing those things on a business and enterprise level. And this is also having to do with refactor and re-architect. So things like access to these applications over time. Okay, next on our security strategy slide, we're bringing in cloud migration now. We'll talk a bit about cloud migration. And so this is 59% of enterprises, so this is 10,000 plus, 59% have gone up on using virtual machines, of which 82% are now using containers, 71% using serverless, and 90% DevOps. And that kind of builds a picture now, right? If we're using virtual machines in the cloud environments, chances are we're going to be using containers for development and deployment of our applications. Also, serverless is becoming extremely popular, not having to have the infrastructure behind those applications and running everything somewhat siloed. Without the need for that on-prem solution. And with this, though, 90% DevOps in cloud migrations. DevOps and DevSecOps is extremely important in this day and age, because we're seeing an increase in code being pushed that was never once secured. And so now we're starting to focus on the security from the front, middle, and the ending, and really deploying this methodology of culture around what DevSecOps is, not only on the technical side, but also on what it means to move forward. And this also gives you a better view of who you need to bring into your enterprise space. So talking about DevOps, at CSA for our research, we have developed a playbook called the 6 Pillars of DevSecOps. And this really took in kind of step-by-step what a DevSecOps model would look at from a high level. Those are being built out more and more as we go with more detail. And as more volunteers and members join and give us insight on what they think DevSecOps means, we're starting to build that out more. This encompasses things like maturity models, and that's your pillars for implementation, and establishing that culture, removing silos that were once there, still exist in a lot of companies. A lot of departments are siloed from developers, which silos your security, which silos your ERM. And it's really saying how all these things come together and what that can look like for you. Next would be your containers and microservices. So the tools and architectures, building with cloud tools, training people to build with those cloud tools, and operating at a larger scale or smaller scale, depending on who you are. Next is evolving. So that's where serverless comes into play. So we have more reliance on the cloud. We want to be faster. We want to be more agile. How do we do that? How do we go from once what we knew to having absolutely no infrastructure that someone else is managing? What does that mean for our developers? And lastly, we have automation. And this is a key component of DevSecOps because of your ability to take away the manual that was once there and adding something that can automatically just build out and be faster for your team on a timed scale. And so this even includes things like your secure code libraries, scaling your security, and you're automating compliance. Not only just automating, the deployments and the checks and the scans, but making sure that you're compliant as well on things like patching and of those sorts. And so this is really key for CISOs as well, because you want to be in the know and have a confirmation of a lot of these items. Okay, so our third security strategy that we want to go over is zero trust. So 72% of enterprises right now have a planned strategy for zero trust. As we heard earlier in the morning, there were 11 mentions of this in the executive order. That's kind of a big deal if other people are seeing zero trust as well, right? Especially at that level of government. It's probably something pretty critical and something to look at that a lot of research has gone into. And this is the number one identity access management challenge, and that's your privileges and permissions. So this is less of looking at it as a solution, but how do we focus on it as a strategy? And I think in this day and age, the implementations are probably easier, and it's really the planning that needs to be focused on, because zero trust won't work for everyone out the gate, and there has to be a lot of input onto folder classifications, roles and responsibilities, building RACI flowcharts. And oftentimes that probably takes a lot longer than the technical side of it, but it's bringing it all together that will encompass that timeline. And so zero trust, what this looks like for us right now, currently from research, is things like our strategic guidance. So your principles and tenets of what zero trust is, and that is your business model. So that's your strategic approach, what the business needs to focus on, what's even good for the business. Why do I need to go to zero trust? But also not only that, but okay, we have our regular username, email, login, and that's it. Why do I need zero trust? Why do we have to use a YubiKey? Well, it's enabling the business leaders to identify what passwordless in the future looks like and why that could actually amplify business and speed up business day to day when your users won't have to focus on things like passwords. They're already trusted in the environment by nature of zero trust model. And so that's things that strategic approaches have to look at. Next, again, we have reference architectures. These are big because this is what's going to help you build your control model for things like zero trust. So that's your design, your basic architectures, and even the products that encompass zero trust. There's a lot of things involved, even things like YubiKeys, authenticator apps, and things like that. So other things come into the zero trust model aside from just zero trust. Next, we have identity. So zero trust is no trust. It's the very minimal that you would give anyone. So everyone has the same, everyone's treated the same, and you have to be who you say you are by way of physical device. And so this is bringing those devices, services, agents, servers, hardware, software, bringing it all into the bigger picture and creating somewhat of an identity governance around every individual in your business, which enables you in the future to really just understand who needs better permissions. Lastly, your networking. So are we doing software-defined perimeter? Are we doing micro segmentation? Are we hosting jump servers that need to also have a zero trust model or a layer behind them? And so it's those things like that. And of course, things like hidden networks. Okay, next, security strategy, new technologies, IoT, 5G. They're going to be coming out soon, if not already. IoT most certainly is. 5G is rolling out slowly, as we know. This is going to be a $700 billion industry, and that was last year. Moving forward, there's going to be 125 billion IoT devices by 2030. Everything's connecting to the internet. It's no lie. Our watches, our phones, other gaming devices are coming out every day that can connect. Cars are connecting, and so it's really adding security controls and focus around IoT and 5G combined. because now with all these new devices coming out, they're also coming enabled with 5G. And so it's really looking at what the trends are going to be, how to protect those, and ensuring businesses that have a key focus like healthcare services in things like IoT and 5G, where devices are everywhere. It's really important to start putting those into practice, the controls and the environments in which they are, so we can better protect those individuals. Next is things like blockchain. Our security strategy, again, focused on new technology and what we're seeing in the cloud for trends. Blockchain, it's no lie that it's blowing up right now. We are actually in the middle of a bull run that's going to be going on for a few more months. For those of you in the crypto trading world or just in the technology world in general, you're hearing about it. All these other tokens are coming out that are pumping and dumping, as they say. But all of this combines to create a focus on the actual use case behind it, and that's blockchain. And this is what's driving all these new initiatives. You have things like NFTs coming out, providing inheritance models and money models that we've never seen before. Well, what does this mean for enterprises? I mean, they're running in AWS. Well, if you're running a blockchain environment, you need to understand the controls around that base layer like you would anything else. And it's really combining that information into a future plan. If you plan on using blockchain for things like supply management, supply tracking, there's businesses using it for cybersecurity right now to pay threat intelligence analysts for confirming on the network itself for blockchain. So it's taking a look at those new initiatives and really driving forward. Lastly, in some of our new technology for a security strategy is going to be focusing on AI, machine learning. So 80% of the emergent tech is incorporating AI. And this is a really important statistic because a lot of this has to do with the manner in which security and intelligence is being handled and how computers are learning, how that code is learning to adapt to those, how machine learning is being built to better these programs. And what does that mean for security? It's going to be a $15 trillion industry by 2030. I think we need to get early and a fast handle on what that means. And so that's making sure companies are avoiding that bias that's been built into artificial intelligence and avoiding that. So it's kind of all just leading the same direction, unbiased approach, and it's doing what it's supposed to be doing without any side interference. It's also securing your AI. So securing your AI code libraries. The ability to, if you have a chatbot that's AI, the ability to lock that down so nothing on the back end can be pushed out on it. And this goes into cloud-driven technologies. Again, blockchain, distributed ledger technology. So the key components of it, your IoT, so things like your edge computing, your edge devices, your routers. What does this all mean, bringing it into a network? As a business, are we going to use that? Are you going to use that as an enterprise? And so it's really getting a grasp on what you need to focus on. But also, if it's in the cloud, you're in the cloud, there's a chance you might need to take a look at it still. And so as research team, we really drive that thought that we need to start focusing on a lot of this. Next thing is quantum. Experts have told us by 2030 is when quantum computers will have a capability to break traditional computing models in certain cryptography levels that they'll be able to start breaking. We go input a password strength thing and it says this is strong for 100 years. In 2030, that 100 years might actually end up being 5 years. And so we have to be prepared for that. We also have to understand when that happens, if there is an ability to start breaking down a lot of these cryptography structures, what does that mean for data? And so that's what a lot of what the quantum group is going to start focusing on in the near future, if they aren't already, and just looking at things like data harvesting and how to protect against it. And then lastly, we have AI. I spoke on this on the last slide. I don't need to repurpose it, but this is just the best practices for building without bias and those security flaws. So quickly, this is our CSA research. This is just a quick overview of our active public working groups. From the base of the tree up, it is high level. Our bottom, our base guidance is the base of the tree, and then we build up in a more granular areas. So we start with things like your architectures, your assessments, the security guidance we talked about, that's in there. And then we start going up to things like threat intelligence, privacy, all the emerging tech, blockchain we talked about. It's all at the top level, and we start building out and branching more granular into each of these areas. And so these are all of the current working groups we have. And we love to see everyone come in, no matter the knowledge level that you may have. It's really important that we get all sides of each of these into play, all of the ideas, all sides of the ideas and knowledge, so everyone has a chance to really present there. Our focus is really education, thought leadership, having people come in, just asking that question that's never been asked, and really being thought provoking. The tools and standards that we're using. So research is building out these tools, we're building out these standards, and we're helping enterprises stay secure. And that's really what the key component is. And like we said before, this is collaboration. It's important we're all coming together, especially in security and technology. I don't think we can stress enough how important collaboration is. Even if you have someone that works at another company, it's important that we're collaborating together. And then lastly, it's best practices and solutions. Quickly, this is just to throw out what our research has done. 320 plus, I think we're over 350 now for publications, 540 webinars, 1,000 blogs. We offer now part of our trainings as CCSK, CCAK, and more, which our training teams and our other teams within CSA are doing extremely well, bringing education to everyone in the growing key areas that need to get focused on, especially auditing more recently. And all of these are in 14 plus languages, available to many people. And I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us. And if you have any questions, please visit our research page, or please reach out to me if you have our email. And that is the end of my presentation. And did we go to Q&A really quickly? How do people typically access our work? What's the typical scenario when someone accesses, for example, your reference architecture? Well, it's all available to download on our pages. It's typically you go to, say, the Enterprise Architecture Working Group. So you can go to our CSA page for Enterprise Architecture, and all of our downloads are on that page. There's, I think, right now 5 to 6 downloads. So there's things like the EA to CCM mapping, our reference architecture guidance, 2 guidance documents actually for that'll walk you through how to use that step by step. And then a shared responsibility model as well, which you can also see in the CCM. And so a typical scenario where someone accesses, we've had people join the working group who are looking to utilize it for something like policy development, and then we'll actually go ahead and just walk them through, or I'll take a meeting with them on the site and walk them through, which I'm always happy to do as well as anyone on our research team is happy to do. And I think that is actually it on my questions in chat.